Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how to break up with our old selves. Because Farah made a TikTok or an Instagram reel this week, and I loved it. And I also had the quote saved on my phone, and it was, I'm going to butcher it again. It was like, your new life is going to cost you your old life.
Exactly like that, yeah.
Right? Yeah, okay. um, and I remember when I first came across that quote, and it hit me hard in terms of like, okay, I can relate. Like, I can relate to the fact that my old life has to actually be something that goes away to make space for this new life and my new goals and whatever it is I want to do. And it seems so easy on the front of it to think, oh, well, obviously, like, if I want new habits, then I need to get rid of old ones. And while it seems easy on the front of it, I think we have very deep emotional attachments to our comfort zones, our comfort feelings, and all of the little annoying elements that make up our old selves. So this week, I wanted to talk about how we can actually break up with them and then leave them behind, look at them in the rearview mirror as we're being like, I don't know, fabulous and our new selves and going towards our goals and all these kind of things. So let's talk about like practical ways to do that, but also how hard it is, because I'm still like, I'm like holding hands with my old self right now. Like,
can't let it go just yet.
Yeah. Like maybe just like pinky, like, you know, that. Yeah. So let's talk about that. What is it? Because you made the reel this week. So have you just come across this quote, and how has it impacted you this week?
So I came across it a while ago, but I think I only really started deeping it recently, as in, I think it's something that, it's one of those things, like you said, you know in your heart that that's what you have to do logically. Like, if you want to see yourself in new places and leveling up and, you know, reaching all these goals that you set for yourself, if you know that's what you want, you know that you can't stay exactly where you are, because where you are right now is the person that hasn't achieved all those things. So logically in my head, yes, that made sense. But I think when you actually hear the words, the life that you want and the life that you're going after is going to cost you the current life that you have right now, it just hits different, because then you actually realize, okay, no, this actually you have to shed away if you want the next level, because without you moving away from what you have right now, you're not going to get to there. So I think I've looked at it in two ways. I've looked at it in terms of like where I'm headed and where I want to be next versus where I am now, and looking at my position and, you know, the comforts that I have now and the way of life that I'm living now, and, you know, trying to create a distinction between like, okay, what does that look like in the next level for me, like going forward. So I've looked at it in that sense, but then I've also looked at it looking back. So the way I've approached like moving forward previously. So in the video that you're talking about that I posted on my socials this week, I was looking at that quote from the lens of that person that I was a few years ago, trying to get to the position I'm in now, and feeling that like guilt and that feeling of like loss almost for wanting to move forward, and feeling like I was doing something wrong because of it, and feeling, I guess it was those feelings of guilt, because you almost feel like, well, I at least felt like I didn't want to be seen as like, you know, trying to be better than those around me. Or I feel like it comes down to a lot your environment as well, and depending on the people that you're around and the environment you're in, a lot of the time when you look at leveling up or going to the next level, if you do get trapped in that mindset of, oh, well, I can't like be seen as thinking I'm better than them if I do try and, you know, do big things. So it was kind of from that lens as well, of feeling like I'm going to be now out of place from my current environment. But that is the whole point. And I think that's why I made it. It's because the whole point is to be not where you are right now. So of course you're going to be out of place. Of course it's not going to be your now normal, because that's the whole point of moving to the next level. And this whole idea of changing as well comes into it, because that's something I've struggled with a lot, is the idea of like changing as a person is a negative thing. And people, you know, like if people have grown up with you or know you well, or they think they know you well, and then you kind of start evolving as a person, as we all do, but then you get those labels of, oh, they've changed, and that's always seen as a negative thing. So hearing that quote is almost kind of validating my feelings, and the fact that you changing is actually a very positive thing, and it has to happen. Like, that change is necessary, and anyone saying that you changing is a negative thing when you're in pursuit of your goals, they're just people you've outgrown. It's as simple as that. It's people that are not on the level that you're on anymore, and that's okay. And I think that's probably what I've struggled with in the past, is accepting that not everyone's going to grow with you, and everyone kind of has their own life to lead, and they have their own ambitions and goals and places that they see themselves in, but you can only really focus on your life path and where you want to see yourself. And I think that's something that I don't know, I guess the light bulb moment went off a little bit when I heard that quote, because it kind of like it validated my feelings in knowing that actually I didn't have to feel so guilty, and what I was doing was the right thing to do, even though I felt like it wasn't. But yeah, and moving forward, I think it's more a case of now, okay, I'm looking at that next level and that next goal, and what does that version of me look like, and how does that compare to who I am now, and how are we gonna again change and evolve to get to that place. But what about you? What's your experience been like with the whole?
Mine revolves a lot around self-loathing and self-hatred when it comes to like changing or becoming better. And it's interesting to hear that you have like more of a guilt related perspective on it, because I found that really interesting when I watched your video. Like, I didn't really clock the guilt aspect of that myself. But for me, I have struggled with like the feelings of when I'm trying to become better or change, or even just, break cycles that I know don't like bring anything to my life, that I get stuck in. I get really annoyed at myself, like, especially when I keep falling back into bad cycles or negative ways of thinking, or just like I do a bad habit once in a while that I know I don't do anymore, or I know I'm trying to like improve upon. I'm really bad at berating myself, especially mentally. And something I love about the quote, and in the quote, it said that your new life is going to cost you your old one. Like, mathematically, that means like 1 + 1 is 2. Like, that one, you need the one to make the two, right? So it's like you actually need your old life to make your new life. And I think that's something I'm really trying to fill myself up with, is like gratitude for the parts of me that I don't really like, because I can't have the new parts, the version 2s, without the version 1. And that's been really hard for me to wrap my head around. And I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I had like just a bad weekend of like a full weekend of just bad mental cycles and like self-sabotage. And I felt like how I used to feel at uni when I was like super depressed and did really bad things. Like, not bad things in terms of like anything bad, I mean like mentally I was like really hard on myself. I was super depressed. I didn't do anything good for my body. Like, I never worked out. I didn't eat good. And I felt like that weekend, a couple of weekends ago. And I really randomly, because I was just, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was scrolling on TikTok, and this woman made this TikTok that just like spoke to exactly how I was feeling in that moment. So I went onto her profile. She did like one-to-ones. I just booked this random one-to-one with this like person. I literally just watched their TikTok. I've never done that like so impulsively before. And in the one-to-one call, I was just like talking to her about how I was feeling. And she had this analogy that I now have been thinking about daily, is that you can't, if you imagine your new self or the person you want to be as like someone just like running around a track, you can't be running around this track without all the old versions of yourself in the like the seating bit like cheering you on. And it sounds really cringy to like say it like that, and also even think about it like that. Like, I cringed a little bit. Like, when she said it, I was like, oh, that feels a bit like made up, almost like a bit too forced. But actually, on the face of it, you can't. Like, I can't be a better version of myself without being this version of myself that I'm trying to build upon. And it also emphasized how much we have to like watch what we fill ourselves up with, because that's what comes out. And like, I was filling myself up with like hatred against myself, loathing against myself, like berating myself, punishing myself, asking myself like, why can't I do this? Why do I keep falling back into these bad habits? When really I should have been, instead of thinking those things, I should have been filling myself up with like, okay, it's fine that I'm doing this now because tomorrow I'm going to try and do better. It's fine that I used to do this 5 years ago because I wouldn't know what needs to be done in a better way to become the person I am today. Like, I fill myself up with the gratitude a bit more, which is something I'm like actively trying to do. It's not necessarily something that you do once and you just immediately like, oh, I don't hate myself anymore. It's great. It's like,
happy days.
Yeah, it's like going to the gym. Like, you have to put the reps in for this kind of stuff. Like, you have to. I'm genuinely like, this is gonna sound a little bit like anal, but I've got a calendar reminder in my phone on 3 days of the week to do a little gratitude session in the morning, because I try to commit to doing like gratitude meditation or like writing things I'm grateful for in like my journal in the morning, and I keep forgetting, and I also keep like not being consistent with it. So I'm just like aiming for 3 times a week. I'm like trying to treat my mental health journey as my gym journey and like my fitness journey. I'm trying to like schedule them in and like start small and then build up from there. And it's working so far, because all it does is that it just reminds me like, oh, like the more often I do something, the more often I think about it. So like, because I've done my 3 gratitude sessions in the last week, I'm like thinking more often, oh, I need to be grateful for that instead of hating it, which is just my problem.
No, I think that's a really good way to look at it, because ultimately your mental health is as important as your physical health. So in the same way that you would structure your days or your routines or, you know, your exercises, you can do the same thing for your mental health. So I think that totally makes sense. And I really actually like the way that you viewed the quote in the mathematical way, because the way you said that you're adding to your existing self or your old life to like move you into the new direction. Because the way I saw it was a trade-off. Like, it's costing you your old life, which means that you are essentially trading your old life for your new life. But I prefer the way you look at it, because then you're actually acknowledging that the way you are now is still to be appreciated, and it's still important to take you forward, because you're not going to be a completely different person. You still have all the experiences and the knowledge, and like everything you've been through is going to carry through. Like, whatever stage of life you're in, you're always going to have that foundation. And whether it's the foundation that you choose to kind of, you know, like start unraveling and change, that's always going to stick with you, and the core of who you are. So that's never going to be like part of the trade-off, I guess. So I think that's a good way to look at it and acknowledge, okay, well, I'm going to move forward now, but I'm going to appreciate where I am and who I am, and like all my little quirks and the way I do things, and I can do better, and I can try to strive for more, and I can like improve skills or just the way I do certain things, but the core of who I am will remain, and that's a good thing. And that's something that I can happily carry through with me to the next stage. So I feel like, yeah, I want to second that's something I've learnt.
Yeah, it's like all part of the equation. Like your true core self, it's part of the equation. The 1 + 1 = 2. You just can't have the better version of yourself without the beginner version of yourself. And I think that applies to like so much stuff. Like, even if you take your new life is going to cost you your old life. If you're trying to become better in your career or like a better skilled at something, you can't go from like beginner to advanced level in anything. If whether it's the health of your mind and the health of your life, or the actual like level of career you're at, like you have to start somewhere and like work in increments. And if you hate yourself for being at the increment you're in, you're not gonna magically love yourself when you get to advanced level or your version 2 or your better self. Like, it's the same. There's another quote. Oh my God, let me just get it up 1 second. There's no happy ending to a miserable journey. So you literally can't like, you just can't hate yourself into happiness. It just doesn't work. But I've also heard that before and not really understood why. Like, why can't I hate myself into happiness?
Just let me know.
Why not?
No, do you know what used to really piss me off is the whole like focus on the journey and not the destination BS. Like, it's not BS to me anymore, but I used to get so wound up by that because I was like, well, I hate my life right now, and how am I meant to enjoy this? Like, this is not where I want to be, and I never understood it. But I think the point of that is to develop those like healthy habits on the way up, and not necessarily like be beating yourself up or being hard on yourself or doing things in unhealthy ways, and not creating that sustainable, like work ethic, and not bailing yourself out, and not having that miserable mindset of like that lack of gratitude and things like that. I feel like that's what it means, but nobody explains stuff like that. They're just like, just be happy where you are, and then you can be happy in the end. But if you are miserable where you are right now, it doesn't matter like what anyone says to you. You're still gonna feel that misery, and you're still gonna feel the feelings that you do about your situation. So I feel like you have to put stuff into context so much that a lot of quotes I love, and I think like the one that we've started this whole episode on, I feel like that is a very profound quote to me now. But there's certain ones I've heard in the past that only now, and maybe it's that prefrontal lobe developing, I don't know, maybe we just needed to get to this stage in life to realize actually shit makes sense. And actually like this stuff that people have been talking about all these years, they have a point. I don't know.
They've been knowing.
I should have listened clearer. But I think at some point you have to allow yourself to maybe like not get it for a little bit, but still take it in. I don't know, because I feel like I was so annoyed by hearing stuff like that, because I didn't understand like, what the hell do you mean like just be happy? Because I'm not.
Do you know what? I actually love that. If you're listening, that is some fantastic homework for this lesson. This podcast.
What are we teaching them?
1 + 1 = 2.
Lesson over.
But yeah, I think some really good homework is if a quote ever like irritates you or confuses you, or you're like, what the hell?
What the hell?
I think you should write it down and then maybe reflect on it in like a year or 2 years time and be like,
post 25 years old, then you can tell me, does it make sense or does it still not? Because 99% of the time it will actually start clicking.
Yeah, I actually want to hear if you have quotes that you've heard and you're like, what the hell is this? I want to know what they are, because I want to know if I'm actually if I'm as self-aware or frontal lobe developed as I think I am.
But do you know what?
Quite good.
Actually, having said all of that, I also am genuinely in a much better position now than I was when I heard those things. So maybe that's also why
you're like easily triggered.
Understand it. Yeah, because I think if you are in a really negative headspace and environment and like things are getting you down, how do you genuinely like hear motivational things and want to listen?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard. It's so, and don't get me wrong, I did to some extent, like I got to the place I am now from there. So I did listen to a lot of it, but I think there's certain things that probably, trigger you more based on like your situation. But then maybe it's just the self-awareness of knowing, okay, this is coming from a place within, it's not external, and it's not a them problem, it's actually a me problem, because what they're saying is valid, but it's just how I'm internalizing it based on my context and my situation. And a lot of the time, if you do take that step back, you can start to see signs in your own like ways of thinking and be like, okay, but I could take a leaf out of their book and I could actually, like try and implement this into my life, and maybe it won't be so bad. So I feel like that's probably the approach I would take now, looking back, because maybe I would have got there a little bit quicker, or it would have been less painful in some ways. I don't know, rather than just like hammering that idea of everything is bad and miserable and I'm never gonna get there.
Yeah, I think I would have done. I think I'm on the same page as you in terms of like what I should have done versus what I did do. But I think one of my biggest like fallbacks in my journey to being here now is the fact that I was in such a rush to feel better, and I was in such a rush to like learn rather than like get to my goal. And I think that probably made me glaze over the importance of some things. But I think, and I saw an Instagram post about this, and I unfortunately just cannot remember who did it. If I remember, I'll add it. I'll add it like as an overlay, but I saw an Instagram post about how to enjoy the process versus the goal, but they actually calculated like what your big life moments actually add up to in your life. And like they had a nice little diagram where they were like, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you put your work clothes on, you go to work, and then it's like meet the love of your life. And then it's like you come home, you have your lunch, you do some overtime, you get a promotion. And if you add up all the like little mundane things you were doing in a day, it's like 95%. And if you take those two like key moments that most people strive for, most people think that's the thing that's going to make me happy, it made up 5% of the day. So mathematically, again, or like logically, I guess, if you focus on being happy 95% of the time, then the 5% isn't going to make so much of a difference. Versus if you're waiting for that 5% to make you feel fully happy, you're not really giving yourself the best chance of like just bottom line being happy. And I think that was quite a nice way to think about it as well. And like the fact that like your goals, it's great that you have goals, and it's great that you're driven towards doing like 3 things every year that you really want to do. But those 3 things probably don't make up the entirety of your life. Yeah. They're not everything. Like the year you spend trying to run a marathon in the goal time that you want, you've still spent a year doing like loads of other things. Have all those other things made you happy? And I think it's like trying to think about life that way. It's like, okay, well, how can I make washing the dishes like a more enjoyable experience? Like, how can I make walking my dog a more enjoyable experience? Like, it's thinking about all the little things you do during the day and removing the like loathing, hatred, and like I don't know, unenjoyment out of them, and then replacing those things with like little things that make you happy. And I think we talked about this in an episode where we were talking about like romanticizing your routine and romanticizing your life. And I think that's how romanticizing stuff plays into like overall you being happier and you being able to like get to that ideal version of yourself and feel happy when you're there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it does come down to the little things, and that's also something I hated hearing. But at the same time, I realize now, if I had implemented that, like you were saying, like make those mundane things, and what I'm trying to do now, like the whole romanticizing life aspect that I never ever considered before, that I feel like it is statistically, if you're going to spend more time of your day in that happy mindset more consistently, you're going to genuinely feel better about your life. I feel like there's no way it could be the opposite. So I feel like that should be the goal in general. Like you should have these big like milestones and things, of course, that you want to hit, but on a more granular level, like if you're looking at day to day, there's got to be more that you're striving for in terms of like your happiness. And I feel like your happiness shouldn't be determined on like your next goal or your next mission in life. That's probably going to take you a year or 6 months or that massive extended period of time that you're just like waiting to be happy until you reach that point. Because isn't there some kind of, some kind of fallacy?
Oh yeah, the arrival fallacy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where you get there and you're just like,
yeah.
Okay, I got it. Now what? And then you're just like, on to the next thing, and then you have that whole miserable period before your next goal again, and then it just keeps happening. So that's probably what I've learned as well, is that when you keep achieving your goals, but then you're not feeling that feeling of like consistent, like you feel good, don't get me wrong, like you feel great, but then it's for a split second and then you're back to like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
You can't live like that. That's a miserable way to live.
And I think it's like our old selves, the versions of ourselves we want to break up with, they're the versions that are like sitting there like waiting to hit a goal, feeling miserable in life. Like that's why we need to break up with them, because they're not enjoying life. They're just like, they're actually sitting in the corner being miserable, like waiting for you to just like hit that goal, while you're sitting there like for example, today I have like on the face of it like a relatively boring day because I'm going on a trip soon and I have loads of like admin, filming, like planning to do. So I purposely this morning I went to the supermarket, and I may have overdone it a little bit. I bought like a lot of strawberries because Scottish summers give you really good strawberries. And I'm making these like little, well, I've actually already made them, but I'm going to make them again. These little like candy strawberry things as a snack in between filming. And I bought some coconut water because I'm going to make a little coconut matcha after lunch, which is going to be quite late now. But you know, like just little things where I'm like, how can I get excited for today in like the most irrelevant way? Like, obviously my coconut matcha is not going to change my life, but it means that when I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to be like, oh, I had quite a cute day by myself. Even though I had loads of stressful stuff to do around it, I'm not going to remember that. I'm going to remember the ways I made myself feel really good today. Like, I'm going to go for a little walk because it's so nice outside. And that's not going to change my life. But it means when I go to sleep at night, I'm going to be like, feel proud of myself today. Or like, I feel kind of happy today. And like, that's what it's all about.
It's that overriding emotion then. It's like, yeah, you can have parts of your day where you're feeling a bit stressed or anxious or got boring stuff going on. But what's the overriding feeling of the day? And if it's that, then how can you inject stuff within the day to change that overriding feeling? Because no day is going to go perfectly when nothing goes wrong and you're, on cloud 9 for 24 of those hours. Like, it's not going to happen like that, but it's what is the most consistent emotion you felt, or what's the most like just trying to make yourself feel that joy more often is always probably the goal daily to do and to have. So that's something I also want to take away. Like, even when I look at my future self and like where I've been or where I am now, that's definitely something I've been trying to implement more, is that less needing to hit those milestones and goals and more like appreciating like where I am and, the more mundane stuff, but also acknowledging my goals and seeing, okay, but what kind of person can achieve those? And that's like a whole other separate topic, because then you're looking into, okay, like what actual parts of my behavior or like what I do now, my habits will actually help me get to that next goal, or are currently stopping me from getting there. And that's kind of what you need to shed, which is like your old version of you.
Yeah, like the actual actions the old version of you does. Like what of those need to be swapped out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe we could do a little breakdown of our own like our own old habits and like what we've swapped out in another episode.
Yeah, let us know if you want to hear that, because I definitely think a lot of them are a work in progress for me, but there's some that I've like actually genuinely started, and it's a wave as well. It's like sometimes you feel like you nail it, and then other times you're like back to square one. Damn it, man.
Yeah, but it's all about just like making that wave happen more often. Like, I'm the same boat as you. It's like sometimes I do, like fall back to square one, and it's all about, like I said at the beginning of the episode, I'm just not going to beat myself up over that. I'm just going to pick back up, make a little strawberry candied fruit snack, and start again, or try again at least.
And be happy.
And be happy and enjoy the journey. So yeah, let us know if that's an idea, a good idea for a part 2 to this episode, because I would actually love to know Farah's.
And I'd love to know yours.
Yeah. So that brings us to our episode for this week. I hope we literally rambled again, but I think that's fine because it was useful ramble. I hope that was a good guide on how to enjoy the now and be a better version of yourself while striving for your goals. And do let us know if you want a part 2 as well. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, leave us a 5-star review. Or is it 5-star? It's a star system, isn't it? Yeah. And leave us a comment as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, comment down below if there's anything you want to hear more from us about, or if you enjoyed this episode. That is us, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.